This is the day.
This is the day
That the Lord has made.
that the Lord has made.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second hour for April 2023. As you all know, we've spent this year exploring the peace testimony. We started talking about Quakers and the historical perspective of the peace testimony. We talked about some more theoretical things having to do with the peace testimony. And then in recent months, we've turned to more local, kind of pragmatic questions of the peace testimony. What does it mean to teach peace? What does it mean to parent in the peace testimony? This month, April and May, we're going to turn to a very captivating question of how do you do peace in the world right now? And so Chloe will lead us in a discussion today about a group that she knows intimately that is doing just really incredible work in one of the most tense, high conflict areas on the planet. So Chloe, take it away.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Michael, could you put the first slide up? Search for Common Ground. I've known them for years, and I will admit to full disclosure here, I was on the Quaker committee that American Friends Service Committee runs, it's an ongoing committee that is tasked or charged to come up with a recommendation for a Nobel Peace Prize. Because the Quakers, AFSC, won a Nobel Peace Prize back in the 40s, we, as a past recipient, are entitled to nominate someone else. Of course, they've never actually accepted our nominations, but we can still do it. And we do, because it gets people that are deserving and organizations that are deserving into focus in a much better way. It's a very rigorous process. We look at so many very worthy people. In fact, if you ever want to sign up for an AFSC committee and want to be uplifted, that's the place to go. It's hard work. You work every month. But you're encountering peacemakers. You're encountering people doing the most incredible things that we look at and evaluate. I was on that committee for 3 years. The year after I left, the third year, we looked at Search for Common Ground, particularly Susan Collin Marks and her husband, John Marks, who were the two founders of the organization. But we couldn't come to consensus or clearness on them that year, which is actually okay, because they did become the nominee for the following year, which was good because I wasn't there. I could feel guiltless. They were carried forward by new people. Susan Collin Marks is also just an incredibly dear friend. She's a lady from South Africa originally. She lived in the States for some time, but she was very active in the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa at great risk to herself, working very closely with Zulu people and other Black South Africans to try to find a new and peaceful way forward. So she met John Marks in South Africa, and it was love at first sight, quite literally. And they were married within 3 months and have been this incredible couple ever since. Susan and John now live in Amsterdam. They're retired from Search for Common Ground. John still travels as a sort of an ambassador for Search for Common Ground. Susan has been having some fairly significant health issues. So she's basically retired now, but she's writing a book, which is really remarkable. And she's just a remarkable person, a person that is imbued with peace and wisdom. I don't think I've actually met a person more deeply wise than she is. So we used to meet every month in Washington and just for lunch and just talk and talk and talk. It's always remarkable. Susan is someone who's got the most remarkable courage in her peace building. She's gone into the middle of the Eastern Congo and worked to solve tribal issues there, where basically tribal isn't even doing justice. These are terrorist groups that are absolutely out to kill each other. And lots of civilians in the middle of that. She hiked up a mountain to meet, at the invitation, but up a mountain in the middle of a conflict to meet with one of the warlords of a conflict, all by herself, with a guy, a local guide. She sat down with this warlord, and she spent 6 hours with him talking through why why this war, why this conflict. She kind of, although not explicitly, but went through those 4 statements that you see on the slide that are really what Search for Common Ground is all about. And she kind of used that as her menu of how to carry this conversation forward. In the process, this gentleman, and she insists that he's called a gentleman, shared his history, his life story, which was unbelievably conflictual, unbelievably harsh. And, he was carrying so much trauma and baggage and just really a hard life. There were no good guys here. There were just trauma and trauma and trauma and hurt and pain and people's lives lost and everything was. She said by the end of 6 hours, he was crying because he'd finally found somebody he could tell his story to. And her job was to be a really good listener, but also to gently nudge him forward to be thinking through these 4 issues here, these 4 statements, that there was a transformation possible, that peace was something that could be achieved, but it would take time. So I've become much more acquainted with her organization ever since. I've been to her house when she was here in Washington many, many times to talk to peacemakers from all over the world, and she always collects them. They always stop by her house, and I hope to visit her someday in Amsterdam. It would be really lovely to do that. She gets back to Washington about 3 times a year, and we always meet, and we talk, and we talk, and we talk. So what I'd like to do today is just give you a better sense of what this organization does. They do very short videos, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I'm going to show you 3 of them just because they give you a really good sense of just pragmatic peace building, just getting your hands dirty, getting stuck in, making things better. So we'll go through all 3 in succession, and then we're going to stop and look at some queries, break into our usual small groups. We don't need to really dissect each one of these videos. I think they're more to leave you with an impression of peace builders, which you'll see when you start to see them. What I'm trying to get at here, I think.
Do you ever stop to wonder, of all the worlds that humans could have created, how did we end up with this one? This land of barbed wire, these cities of rubble, the deep political divides and deeper personal pain. The answer, in short, is violence. Violence that rips apart lives and communities, leaving suffering in its wake. Violence is a choice, and choices are not destiny. We are a Search for Common Ground, the world's largest peacebuilding organization. Over 1,000 people spread across 4 continents, working on the front lines of violent conflict to turn suspicion and fear into community. We start with the truth that common ground is not the middle. It does not ask you to compromise your values or shed your beliefs. Common ground means meeting someone where they are, understanding the deep fears and hopes that drive them, and shifting people so that they are seated on the same side of the table, facing a shared problem together, not as enemies. From Yemen to the US, we use common ground to mend what is broken, finding creative ways to reach millions of people, shifting attitudes and then institutions so that change lasts. We are peace builders, staring violence in the face, standing without fear, bold in our dreams, bolder in our action, leaders who listen, listeners who lead. This is the future that we are building so that one day we can ask, of all the worlds that humans could have created, how did we end up with this one?
Wakati walikuwa tukivua nyuma kabla hizo hazijavaa, kazi yetu ilikuwa ni kazi nzuri sana. Pato letu lilikuwa ni pato nzuri sana. Pato lilikuwa kufanya mambo yote. kuweza kusomesha watoto, kuweza kufanya kila kitu, kukodisha nyumba, kukodisha kila kitu. Lakini kwa dakika hii sasa kutoka tuliozikazo, sisi watoto pia tumewatoa shule.
Maisha yaliyochanganya, unajua maisha yakisha kuchanganya waweza kubadilishwa, kushawishiwa kwa kila njia, ambapo na kijana mdogo huweza kutukuliwa akili zaidi akiwa na hasira kali, kwa sababu vijana ndio wanaotumiwa kuliko wazee.
I was on a lot of loans. My parents are very poor and I don't have any other source of income. That is the time I have seen the best option is going to join the terror groups, Al-Shabaab. Maybe if I could join there, I will get money. I can become a rich person. There I can assist my community. That was the idea I was having. They tell us about having peace, harmony, cohesion, interaction. They're mostly telling me that the bad direction in which you are going. The words I remember usually they're telling me, do you like to kill your brother, your sister? If you don't want to be harmed, why are you going to harm others? We come up with the idea of Kiunga Youth Bunge initiative. We have started mentoring other youth. A huge youth also there have joined Al-Shabaab doing piracy. We usually bring the youth together to talk the bad effects of terror groups. When the Search for Common Ground, they come on board 2.5 years ago, they really assisted us bringing the security agents and community together. The piracy, it has gone down, no piracy at all. And even the recruitment of the youth nowadays it totally went down. I take my stories and telling them how I was, how am I. I'm becoming a role model to them, whereby they are able now to say a good example. Peace is a thing gradual. We are doing it slowly, but we should do slow but sure.
توقف الماء بسبب رفض أحد المواطنين مرور القصبة. جدي كان هو شيخ المنطقة وكان هو يعقد الصلح بين الناس، ولحد الآن إذا في أي مشاكل الوالد وعمي الكبير يسعون إلى حل المشاكل بين الناس بالطريقة السلمية دون أن يلجأوا للمحاكم. هذه كان أسلوبهم من قديم الزمان، ولحد الآن كامرأة كل شيء صعب عليها، كل شيء. أولاً لا أستطيع النزول المتكرر إلى أماكن العمل باعتبار أني امرأة، ولا بد لي من محرم أخرج معه، ولا بد لي من شخص يسهل لي كل شيء. أيضاً من ضمن الصعوبات إنه في بداية الأمر بعض المواطنين أو بعض الوسطاء لم يتقبلوا إنه أن تكون عليهم المشرفة امرأة. وبدأ المقاولين يعني إذا في أي مشاكل أو في أي يرسلوا لي إرسال، والله يا أستاذ إحنا لدينا كذا 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 وعندنا بعض الصعوبات كذا.
من خلال تزويدنا بكافة المعلومات وتذليل الصعوبات كذلك.
لازم الإنسان أي عمل يبدأ يتمارس معه بالصبر وفن التعامل. أحس أن يعني هذا الأمر صعوبة العمل مع منظمة البحث عن أرضية مشتركة قالتني أحس أن ما فيش حاجة بعد كذا صعبة.
I never quite heard the full Yemeni soundtrack that went with that. Usually that's muted, but anyway, that was probably a good thing to hear because you heard the enthusiasm in the Yemeni language. Just the cross section of what they do. That's just a quick impressions of what they do. They are remarkable in the sense that they have this very visual sense of people that are traditionally in mediation or conflict resolution episodes, activities, sitting on opposite sides of a table. And they absolutely will not let that happen. They say, no, you're all going to sit on one side and we're going to think about what are the problems we have to solve? And we're going to write those down. We're going to put them on pieces of paper in the middle of the table. And let's actually all be on the same side to solve those problems. And that's been a remark, just that simple physical act of not being on opposite sides. That's been hugely important for them, just to start to get people to think in different ways than what they thought before. There's lots of stories I could tell. One I think it's really important to tell. Her husband, John, they worked a lot in Kenya. And they actually talked the government of Kenya into letting them start a television show on the public system, the television, the Voice of Kenya. And they put this television show out, and it was a show about a soccer team. And it became incredibly popular. Everybody started to get really into the characters, and they would use this show to profile certain social concerns and events that were happening, and trying to, as a team of soccer players, trying to work through how they would work through these issues. And at the same time showing a lot of good soccer, apparently. This was going on for 3 years, this show. It was a really big hit. And then John Marks, Susan's husband, decided to really push it. And what he did is decide that he would make the character who played the captain of the soccer team come out as gay in a very homophobic country. And the government was not happy about this. He didn't consult with them beforehand because he knew they would say no. But he did it. He just did it. And there was a huge debate literally in Parliament in Kenya whether they should ban the show immediately. And everybody by this time loved the captain. I mean, he was a celebrity. People saw him as a real soccer captain of their team, even though it was all fake. It was a show. And so there was a public demand that the show not be canceled. And the public just dealt with his being gay. It's like they got through it and they moved on, and the show went on for another year, almost 18 months. And the guy was just openly gay, playing soccer. It was just not a big deal. But just, the courage to just go for it sometimes and make this happen is really, really powerful. So I have, as you can tell, a great deal of respect for their upfront and edgy kind of peace building, the kind of peace building that does take risks, but they've been incredibly successful around the world in mostly small conflicts, but still important. They're the kinds that build up an aggregate that moves towards an environment where peace is possible. They're right here, based in Washington. They're right near Kramer Books in downtown. They are happy to have you stop by and see them. They're just amazing people doing amazing work. I'm going to just switch it over to our queries, because our queries are really going to talk to those videos and really have a chance for us to think, well, what does this look like for me? So if Michael, if you would put the videos up, the queries up, that'd be great. The first is, I know, just a sentence of context. Violence is a choice, but vulnerability to violence is often due to entrenched systems of oppression. The query: should peacemakers focus most on trying to influence those individuals who choose violence, or on changing the triggers that lead to violent conflict? In other words, big picture or small picture, or both. Number 2, how are Quakers called to speak out beyond the bubble of our community? And I can't stress that enough, because we're really good at talking to each other and not very good at all at talking to the larger world. How are Quakers called to speak out beyond the bubble of our community to urge the public to visualize, pursue, and live peace as normal, instead of just the lull between violent conflicts? The third one, as we saw, one Yemeni woman, against all the odds, changed the way peace was achieved in community conflicts in her country. And here's the query for you. What can one Quaker of any gender do to build peace against the odds? And right at you, are you that Quaker?